I never meant to lie about who I was, but if I hadn't, I would have never learned what life really costs, and I would have never discovered the truth about the people who claim to love me. My name is Adrian Vale, and before I became the billionaire's son hiding under grease-stained overalls, I was the golden boy raised in glass towers and chauffeured cars, protected by the belief that everyone smiled at me because they cared, not because they feared what my father's money could do to their future. But the night my father told me that he didn't trust me to inherit his empire because I had never suffered for anything, something inside me snapped, and I realized he was right. I was living a life that wasn't mine. So I disappeared. Not kidnapped. Not dead. I simply walked out of my penthouse in a hoodie, took a bus to a town nobody cared about, and introduced myself as Adrian Cole, an unemployed 20-year-old with no future. The only place willing to hire me on the spot was a rundown auto shop that smelled like burnt rubber and broken promises, run by a man named Hank, who looked at me like he knew I wasn't built for hard labor. "Hands soft," he muttered, squeezing my palm. "You ever worked a day in your life?" I swallowed my pride and said yes, though we both knew it was a lie, and he hired me anyway, probably for entertainment. That first day, I shredded my knuckles open, burned my wrist on an engine block, and nearly quit 3 times, but then I met Hermia, the girl with oil in her hair, sadness in her eyes, and a laugh that felt like a lifeline. She didn't treat me like a prince or a project. She treated me like a person, and for the first time in my life, I felt real. But I had no idea that the town I'd chosen to escape into was drowning in secrets. That the girl I was falling for was holding a truth sharp enough to cut through everything I thought I understood. Or that the biggest betrayal wasn't the one I'd committed by hiding my identity in, was the one waiting for me at the end of this journey, buried in the grease, the lies, and the cost of becoming someone new. Working at Hank's garage was nothing like the cushioned existence I'd come from, and every sunrise felt like a punch to the ribs, reminding me that I'd traded silk sheets for a thin mattress that smelled like damp wood and loneliness. But slowly, the routine carved me into someone I didn't recognize. Stronger, someone quieter, someone who didn't need wealth to stand tall. Hank barked orders like a drill sergeant, kicking my boots when I moved too slow and slapping tools into my hands like weapons. "Tighten, don't strangle it," he'd growl whenever I over-tightened bolts, and I'd bite back the frustration crawling up my throat. He wasn't kind, but he was honest, and in a world built on fake smiles, that honesty felt like oxygen. Maya, on the other hand, was the person who kept me from collapsing. She'd show up early, humming old songs while wiping grease off the counters, her calm presence cutting through the chaos. "You look like you fought an engine and lost," she'd tease whenever she caught me rubbing my sore arms, and I'd pretend not to enjoy the way her eyes softened at my exhaustion. She taught me things Hank never did, like how to feel the rhythm of a machine instead of fighting it, how to breathe through frustration, how to trust my instincts. And she really listened to what I said, even when I had to twist my stories to avoid revealing the truth. But the more time I spent with her, the harder it became to keep my lies straight. Every time she talked about her dream saving enough to escape a mother drowning in medical bills, rebuilding her life from the ashes her father left behind, I felt a guilt so heavy it made my chest ache. Because helping her would have been easy for the real me, the billionaire's son with access to limitless resources. But Adrian Cole couldn't help her. Adrian Cole was drowning himself. And whenever I caught her staring at me with that searching, quiet suspicion, I wondered if she already sensed I wasn't who I claimed to be. Still, nothing prepared me for the night I overheard Hank and Maya arguing in low, tense voices outside the shop, saying words that made my blood run cold, words about a secret involving me. One they shouldn't have known, one that would shatter everything I'd built. I didn't intend to eavesdrop that night, But the minute I heard my name slip from Maya's mouth in a tone thick with worry, my feet froze and my heart started pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. Hank's voice was a low rumble, the sound of an old engine barely holding itself together. "I don't care who he reminds you of," he said, boots scraping on gravel. "We can't afford trouble, not again." Maya shot back, her voice trembling with anger or fear I couldn't tell. "But what if he's the reason they came here? What if he's involved?" The word involved sent a chill through my spine, and I pressed my back against the wall, breath tight. They weren't supposed to know anything about me. I'd been careful, no credit cards, no real ID, no contact with the outside world except a prepaid phone hidden under my mattress. Yet somehow they were talking like I wasn't a stranger at all, like I was tied to something dark lingering in their past. "He's not like his father," Maya whispered, and the air left my lungs. How did she know anything about my father? How did she even know who he was? Hank scoffed. "Kids like him are all the same. They burn everything they touch, and we're barely holding together as it is." My throat tightened, guilt clashing with panic. I wanted to confront them, but something held me back, a deep instinct whispering that if I stepped into that light, nothing would be the same again. Instead, I walked away, pretending I hadn't heard a thing, but their voices clung to me long after the shop went dark. The next day, Maya avoided my eyes, moving through the garage with mechanical stiffness, while Hank watched me with a suspicion sharp enough to cut skin. Every sound felt magnified, the clink of metal, the roar of engines, the pit in my stomach threatening to swallow me whole. It was like a storm was gathering, clouds forming in every corner of my life, and I didn't know where lightning would strike first. But deep down, I sensed one truth rising to the surface. Whatever they knew, whatever they feared, it wasn't about me. It was about the man whose shadow I'd tried so hard to escape, my father. For weeks, I lived with the suffocating weight of their secret without daring to confront it, too afraid that the fragile life I'd built would shatter the moment I asked the wrong question. But the truth finally came for me on a stormy evening when the power flickered, rain slashing the windows, and the garage felt like a cage closing in. Maya was alone at the front desk, flipping through old papers with a tension that made her fingers tremble. I approached her cautiously, trying to pretend her distance didn't hurt, but I couldn't ignore the way she flinched when she noticed me. "Maya," I said, my voice rough, "are you ever going to tell me what's wrong?" She didn't answer immediately, she just stared at me, eyes heavy with something like sadness. "Adrian, or whatever your real name is," she whispered, and the ground beneath me seemed to tilt. "I know you're lying. I don't know everything, but I know you're not who you say." My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth, and the lie I'd lived inside began to choke me. But before I could speak, she slid a newspaper across the counter. My face stared back at me from a grainy security camera photo, leaving my family's mansion the night I disappeared. The headline read, "Billionaire heir missing, police investigate possible abduction." My blood ran cold. "You knew?" I croaked. She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I recognized you the second day you worked here. My mom. She used to clean offices in Vale Tower before she got sick. She saw you once and told me about the boy with the sad eyes who had everything but looked like he was trapped." My knees nearly buckled. Maya had known all along and still stayed near me, still taught me, still cared. "Why didn't you say anything?" I whispered. She looked away, jaw trembling. "Because trouble follows rich people, and I didn't want it finding us." "But it did, Adrian. Men have been asking around town about you. Dangerous men. And they're not here to take you home." Her words hit me like a punch. Someone was coming for me, and it wasn't my family. The storm outside thundered, but the real storm was the one rising inside me, fueled by fear, confusion, and a growing suspicion that my disappearance had triggered something far darker than I ever imagined. I barely slept that night, replaying her words in my head until they formed a noose around my thoughts. Dangerous men, asking about me, not my family. So who were they? And why did they know where to find me when even my father didn't? The next morning, Hank confronted me before I could reach Maya. He stood blocking the entrance, arms folded, eyes filled with a bitterness I couldn't explain. I warned her you'd bring trouble, he growled. Boys like you always do. His resentment hit me harder than his words. You think I wanted this? I shot back. You think I planned any of it? But Hank wasn't interested in explanations. He tossed a small folder at my feet, documents, old invoices, photos of the garage from years ago. You want the truth? He said. Look at what your father did. The mention of my father made my skin crawl. I opened the folder, expecting anger, maybe corruption, but what I found twisted my stomach into knots. A decade ago, Vale Industries had tried to buy out Hank's land. When he refused, they shut down the entire supply chain feeding his shop, cutting him off until he nearly lost everything. Your father ruins lives without blinking, Hank spat. And when Maya's father tried to fight back, he disappeared. My breath caught. Disappeared? Hank's jaw tightened. They said he ran. But we know better. My knees went weak as cold dread seeped into me. My father had always been ruthless, but this was something else. Something monstrous. Suddenly, everything clicked. Maya's wariness, Hank's distrust, their fear of my real identity. I represented the man who destroyed their lives. And not him, I whispered, voice breaking. I would never, but Hank cut me off with a scoff. Tell that to the men coming for you. They're not here for your safety. They're here to clean loose ends. And just like that, the truth slammed into me. Those men weren't hunting me because I was missing. They were hunting me because I'd run. Because I knew too much. Because if I spoke, the world would see what my father was truly capable of. Suddenly, Maya appeared behind Hank, eyes wide with fear. We need to leave, she said urgently. Now, and for the first time, I realized disappearing wasn't the hardest part of escaping my old life surviving it was. The three of us fled the garage in Hank's speed-up truck that coughed smoke with every mile, the engine rattling like it shared our panic. Rain battered the windshield, turning the road into a blur of headlights and fear. My thoughts spun wildly as the truth pieced itself together like a puzzle carved from nightmares. My father hadn't sent men to find his lost son. He'd sent men to silence the only loose thread in his empire. Maya sat in the passenger seat, gripping the dashboard, her breathing shallow. Every bump made her flinch, and every time her gaze landed on me, it carried a mix of sorrow and something that felt like betrayal. Hank drove like he'd done it 1,000 times before, taking back roads, switching lanes, avoiding any pattern. This isn't the first time you've run from them, I murmured. Hank didn't answer for a long moment, his knuckles white on the wheel. Your father came after Maya's dad the same way. He fought too loud, pushed too hard, and one day he just vanished. Maya's voice cracked as she added, the night he disappeared. He left a message on our answering machine saying he found something that could expose Vale Industries. My pulse thudded painfully. And you think he was killed? She didn't have to answer. The silence spoke louder than words. Thunder cracked overhead, the sound echoing my racing heartbeat. So what happens now? I asked, Hank's jaw clenched. We get you to someone who can protect you. Someone outside your father's reach? There's no one outside his reach, I whispered, dread settling like ice in my veins. That's where you're wrong, Hank said. Your father built an empire on fear. But fear only works until someone stops being afraid. His words felt like a spark in the darkness. But before hope could take root, headlights flared in the rearview mirror bright, fast, gaining on us. Maya turned, her face draining of color. It's them. The truck lurched forward as Hank slammed the gas, tires screeching, the engine growling in protest. My pulse roared in my ears as the car behind us closed in, threatening to ram us off the road. Everything inside me screamed that this was the moment my past caught up, the moment everything broke. But I wasn't ready to die. Not before I uncovered the truth. Not before I protected the people who'd shown me what real life cost. The chase stretched across the empty highway like a nightmare that refused to end. The other car inching closer with every desperate second. Hank jerked the wheel sharply, sending us skidding around a curve, but the headlights behind us swerved flawlessly, staying locked onto our tail. Maya clutched my arm, nails digging through my jacket, her trembling telling me exactly how terrified she was. "They won't stop, Adrian," she whispered, voice cracking. "They'll kill us." Something inside me hardened, a resolve I didn't know I possessed, and I grabbed the metal toolbox, sliding around the truck bed. "We're not going down without a fight." Hank yelled for me to stay put, but adrenaline drowned his words. I climbed halfway out the window, wind whipping my face, rain slicing my skin, and lifted the heavy toolbox as the pursuing car pulled up dangerously close. For a moment, all I heard was my heartbeat, then I hurled the toolbox with every ounce of strength I had. It smashed into their windshield, shattering the glass in a burst of glittering shards. The driver swerved violently, tires screeching, and the car skidded off the road, disappearing into darkness. I collapsed back into the seat, gasping, soaked, trembling. Hank stared at me like he'd just seen a stranger. "You're not your father," he muttered, the faintest hint of respect cutting through his anger. We drove until the rain faded and the sun began to rise, dull and gray, over a lonely gas station where Hank finally stopped. The three of us stumbled out, exhausted and soaked, our shadows long and shaken. Inside the quiet station, Maya rounded on me, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You could have died," she said, punching my chest, her voice breaking. "You idiot, you could have died." I caught her fists gently. "I'd die before I let them hurt you." The words left my mouth before I could stop them, and she froze, staring into me like she was searching for the truth I'd been afraid to say. But before anything more could pass between us, the gas station door swung open. A man entered, sharp jaw, cold eyes. And he said the last name I ever wanted to hear spoken aloud. "Mr. Vale, your father wants you home." Maya's hand tightened around mine. Hank reached for a wrench behind the counter, and I realized the nightmare wasn't over. It had only found us again. The man who stepped into the gas station moved with the smooth confidence of someone who didn't fear consequences, his polished shoes clicking against the floor like a countdown. "Let's not make this difficult," he said, eyes locking on mine with predatory calm. "Your father is very worried." The lie burned hotter than the fear twisting in my gut. Maya shifted closer, her breath shaking, while Hank placed his body between us like a wall built from years of surviving people like this. "He's not going anywhere," Hank growled. The man smirked. "You think you can protect him? Your shop barely stayed afloat after the last time you crossed the veils." His gaze slid to Maya, something cold flickering there. "And as for her, we know who she is. We know what her father tried to steal." Maya stiffened beside me, nails digging into my arm. Anger surged through me, fierce and blinding. "He didn't steal anything," I snapped. "He tried to expose the truth." The man tilted his head like he was studying a puzzle. "So you do know. That makes things easier." He reached into his coat, and for a terrifying second, I thought he was pulling out a weapon, but instead he produced a phone and slid it across the counter toward me. The screen lit up with a video. My father, his expression cold, composed, and terrifyingly calm as he said, "Son, I need you to come home before you make this mess any worse. You're compromising things you don't understand." Compromising. Mess. Not once did he say he missed me. Not once did he sound afraid for my safety. He sounded afraid of what I might reveal. The man leaned forward. "Come with me willingly and no harm comes to them." Meaning Hank, meaning Maya, meaning anyone who'd shown me real humanity. The choice carved me open. Go, and I'd be walking into the lion's den. Stay, and the people I loved would be devoured first. Maya whispered, "Don't trust him," but I could hear the fear beneath her defiance. Slowly, I stepped forward and raised my hands. "I'll go," I said. Hank swore under his breath. Maya gasped my name. The man smiled like he'd already won. But as he turned to lead me out, I caught Maya's gaze and mouthed a silent promise, "I'm not done." And I meant it, even if the next step I took might be straight into hell. They transported me in a black SUV with tinted windows, the kind my family used for charity galas and hostile takeovers. But this time, I was the cargo, not the heir. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the low hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the man's radio. My wrists weren't cuffed, but the unspoken threat was enough to keep me still. As the city lights blurred past, memories of my father's empire surfaced, rooms full of lawyers, board members who bowed like puppets, conversations whispered behind locked doors. How many of them knew what he'd done? How many helped him bury the truth? When the SUV finally stopped outside Vale Tower, the sight of the familiar glass monolith made my stomach twist. I'd grown up looking at this building like it was a kingdom. Now it felt like a prison. The man guided me through the private entrance, past guards who pretended not to see me. When the elevator doors closed, the air thickened with dread. "He won't hurt you," the man said, almost bored. "You're his son." "And Maya's father was someone's son too," I muttered. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The doors opened to my father's office-wide windows overlooking the city, a desk large enough to hide sins under, and my father standing with his back to me, hands clasped behind him. "Adrian," he said without turning, "you've caused quite a stir." My fists clenched. "Where's Maya's father?" He finally faced me, expression unreadable, irrelevant. The words sliced through me. "Tell me what you did." He sighed like I was a stubborn child. He tried to blackmail me with fabricated evidence. I simply neutralized a threat. "Neutralized?" I choked. "You destroyed their lives." His eyes hardened. "I protected our legacy." Rage flooded me, hot and uncontrollable. "You sent men after me," I accused. "Not to find me, but to silence me." He didn't deny it. He just stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder with chilling calm. "You're my son. Everything I do for you. One day, you'll understand." I shoved his hand away. "I'll never be like you." His regardless smile twisted something inside me. "You already are." And in that moment, something inside me snapped at it with fear, but with clarity. I wasn't staying here. I wasn't becoming him. I just didn't yet know how to escape. My escape didn't come from some brilliant plan or secret ally. It came from the fire alarm I pulled with shaking hands. The blaring sirens erupting through Vale Tower as I shoved past stunned employees and sprinted down stairwells that seemed endless. My father's security force scrambled, shouting into radios, but chaos was on my side. By the time I burst into the street, lungs burning, rain misting the air, I didn't stop running until my legs threatened to collapse. I stole a bike from outside a cafe, pedaling through alleys, driven by one thought: get to Maya. When I reached the garage, I feared the worst, but there she was, waiting outside with Hank, her eyes widening in disbelief before she ran to me and wrapped her arms around me like she thought I wouldn't make it back alive. "I'm so sorry," I whispered into her hair. For everything, she shook her head fiercely. Don't apologize. Just tell me you're done running alone. And I was. For the first time, I wasn't escaping life, I was choosing it. Hank stepped forward, gruff as ever, but there was something new in his eyes. Respect. So what now, kid? Your father's not gonna sit quietly while you burn his kingdom? My hands trembled, but not from fear. Then I'll stop him, I said. Not with money. Not with power, with truth. Over the next weeks, we gathered everything Maya's father had left behind, files hidden in old toolboxes, recordings stored in secret drives, documents detailing illegal deals, sabotage, extortion. Evidence my father had buried, evidence we resurrected. When we released it all to the media, the world erupted. Investigations opened, board members turned, arrests were made. And for the first time in my life, my father faced consequences no amount of money could silence. As for me, I didn't return to the penthouse or the empire I was born into. I stayed in the small town that had shown me what life really costs: pride, sweat, sacrifice, love. I worked beside Hank, building something honest. I held Maya's hand, building something real. I learned that resilience isn't born from privilege. It's forged in the moments you refuse to let your past define you. And if this story teaches anything, it's this. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't wealth. It's the courage to walk away from it